These may be nerdy, but I think sometimes nerdy things are cool. I'm going to go a little bit deeper than you want me to, and you can edit. I'm going to do a little bit of design. I have an idea for an approach that, based on that question that maybe is unique and interesting, because I've never seen anybody really talk about it in meaningful detail. And it's definitely something that I had to give a lot of thought, but I feel like it's a bit of a gimme answer. It's not a gimme answer, but I feel like other people have done the thinking for me on this, but I wasn't privy to their thought, you know?
Nope.
Fundamentally, all of our animation is a series of ping sequences. So we have an image, we flipbook it for another image, flipbook it for another image, classic sprite animation. Specifically, the way we're doing ours is, first, we want the position that our dude is actually in, from image to image, to be exactly the same from image to image, so that when I flipbook, he doesn't kind of float around and move. So for example, if he jumps, then I don't want in the second frame him to be higher than in the first frame, or he kind of magically floats up. Instead, I want him to jump in place, and we can have our code move him up and down as need be. So the first thing is to make sure he's in the same position from frame to frame of the animation. The next thing on top of that is, when we pull the images into our code, the need to have him lined up in every frame means that there's a lot of wasted space all around him that's just transparent. And so part of our sprite sheet creator actually goes through, trims off all the transparency, and smashes them together into a big sprite sheet of a whole bunch of images of the guy as close as can be packed to one another in kind of optimum space. But in addition, beyond cutting off all the transparency, it makes note of and remembers the offset into the image that it's trimmed off and how much it's cut from the bottom. So that when it draws later, and I flipbook it, even though it only draws this weird, unpredictable mess, it can place it back where he was from frame to frame so he doesn't move or float at all. So the first stage is taking the big image and trimming it down into a small one for size and drawing purposes. The second one is, if I drew one of these images big, I might not want all of this to kind of count for a collision. So for example, if a bad guy passes through the tip of my horn, do I really want to say that my hero got hurt? And if a bad guy passes through the tip of his toe, do I want to say he got hurt? Maybe yes, maybe no. But in our case, what we're doing is we're declaring inset into this inset collision offsets. So what that means is we're making a hitbox, and the hitbox can really be anything. But typically, we want to extend it to the bottom of something's feet so he can stand on the floor without floating. And then we might cut off little bits of extraneous decoration. For example, if this guy had big flappy wings, I might say it's okay that intersecting the tip of his flappy wings doesn't count for hurting you. And if this guy had a big horned hat, maybe the top of his horns don't hurt you. But clearly, the bulk of his head should hurt you, and the bulk of his torso should hurt you. And so we want to kind of declare a shape whereby as much of the rectangle is filled as possible, so that no player ever goes, dude, what the hell, that guy totally didn't hit me. So the way that the animation system we built works is kind of have this single running loop that every frame of drawing sets back onto our character which image to use. So from our big sprite sheet, it selects one of these images and replaces the image that represents our character with one of the images. And so it's always doing that, even if you're standing still, if you're running, if you're jumping, if you're dancing, it's always being replaced. But we have this three-layered approach where, like, on the bottom there's something called an idle animation, and if nothing else is running, the animation doesn't stop, it just starts looping the idle animation. And on top of that there's a layer called the looping animation, which might be running, it might be walking, it might be thrusting fire out of a jetpack. And that is one that you can kind of set and forget, and it'll just keep looping that one until you explicitly tell it, okay, stop it, and then it'll fall back to the idle animation. So then the third layer on top of both of those that takes the highest priority is a terminating sequence. Terminating sequence is, for example, a jump. In a jump, you jump until the jump is done, and then you kind of return to one of the other animations. So if you are in the middle of running and you jump, when the jump is over you should fall back to running. But if you're standing idle and you jump, when the jump is over you should fall back to idle. And so even when the player is doing nothing, every object on screen is still constantly being updated to show the next progressive image in a series of loopable or non-loopable images. I feel like it's got to come down even more.
Smart.
Still feels too early, huh?